Dr. Bandler, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Good morning to you all, or whatever time it is, wherever you are. You're coming from places all over the planet. The new book that I've written is about how I work with clients, because people constantly ask me, how do you get results with so many things? And the answer is because I've tried so many things, and I have that basic rule that says if something doesn't work, then don't use it and do something else. And I've done a lot of something else's and found a lot of things that have worked over the years. I have a couple of rules that I follow. The first one is really simple, is that I understand, when I wrote in 1973, The Structure of Magic, which was published in 1975, but it first came out as a manual for a class in 1973, where we laid out that the map is not the territory, that the brain maps things and builds neurological networks that represent the world, but they're not the world itself. This allows us to do three things. In order to build a representation of something, you have to get rid of some things and pay attention to others. That's deletion. You have to distort and say that even though every chair is distinctly different from every other chair, you call them all chairs because they do the same thing. So we generalize, we make a distortion, and from that distortion, it allows us to generalize so that every door doesn't look like a brand new thing. It allows us to function in the world. The purpose of the brain is to make things familiar. The problem is it makes things familiar in a way that's not functional. And then you have to sort out two things. One is the map representing the territory, but doing a bad job. Or number two, it's not representing the territory. So therefore, it needs to, you need to build new territory. They need to pay attention to new things. I think one of the most frequent examples of this that you're going to see is people that have a bad picker for a mate. That, they're seeing people in the world, but they're looking for the wrong things. So therefore, they don't see what's right in front of them. I think a really good example of this is Paul McKenna, who had relationship after relationship after relationship, and then ended up finding out that the perfect woman was downstairs from him and had been there 20 years. If a woman is turned on by the wrong things and keeps having bad relationships, she doesn't realize that when you're looking for something long-term, you shouldn't be taking a short-term device and looking for it, because you'll look in all the wrong places. I met a lot of guys that, were looking for somebody, and they looked every night in a bar, and then they were surprised they ended up with an alcoholic. It's if you don't have something that maps the territory correctly, the people come to me and I'm lonely, and I go, there are 5 billion people on the planet and you're lonely. They're obviously not representing the territory. That, they have a map that looks around, but it's not looking in the right places. So it's not representing everything. And once you sort out the difference between whether you have to redesign what's going on inside the territory that's being represented, or you have to make it so that they can represent new territory, then you can make decisions about what protocol to use, no matter what it is. Because if you don't sort those things out, you'll end up looking in all the wrong places, or trying to get something that's not designed for something. All of our generalizations are in essence small machines. And the question is, does the machine do the job that it's supposed to? So they either need a new machine, or they need to redesign the machine that's there, or use a different machine that they have for a different purpose. If a kid doesn't have a spelling strategy, you can give them all the words in the world and he'll never be able to spell them. But if you give him the spelling strategy, then he will. Then he'll be able to encode information and retrieve information of a certain kind. That when people tell me they're not artistic, very often they have no way of thinking about art. There's no map for it, and there's no territory. They can see the paint, but they don't know what the territory is. They have no idea how to imagine a painting, or to look at something at the outside and get their hand to retrace it on paper. And if they don't have strategies, then you have to give strategies, or you have to redesign the ones they have. In NLP, there's three major categories. You elicit strategies, you install strategies, and then sometimes you modify strategies that are there. And sometimes you have to do what's called artificial design, which is what brought about all of DHE in the end. Design human engineering was designing strategies from scratch. Originally, in NLP, we followed the formula of elegance, which meant you use the least amount of things to get the largest result. In design human engineering, you do just the opposite. You use the criterion of making it fun to do it, so people will do it more often. So it's not by an efficiency expert standards efficient, but it's actually more functional, and it gives people better lives. If you don't make people, in the end, if you can't help people to change and become cheerful, they'll just find something new to complain about. And then to me, the other rule of thumb I always use is called the spider test. And this is from years of having cured phobias, quote unquote. Well, we don't really cure them. What we do is we teach people to think about them differently, so that any problem that people can manifest in their mind and feel as bad or almost as bad as they do in the world, that people, you talk about spiders and people get freaked out, and there's no spider there. People talk about depression, and when you say what depresses them, they'll say, oh, my family, my job, this or that, and they'll be talking about it in a very depressed state, and it's not there. If the thoughts produce the action, thoughts are the easiest thing to change. And 99% of the time, if you run the spider test and find out what they're thinking, then you know exactly what to change. And the original phobia thing of three-place disassociation, which is not the only way to do it, but basically what it does is it has people look at the object and not feel the same thing at the same time. By disassociating them, they're not feeling fear, they're looking at themselves being afraid. And there are hundreds and thousands of different ways of getting people to swap feelings. Because the truth is, if your feelings control your life and your decisions, then you're going to do stupid things. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. And most of the people that come to me that have what I refer to as, it breaks into two categories. You're either optimizing people, so I get a baseball pitcher that it goes in and out of slumps and he doesn't want to slump anymore, or he wants to up his speed, his fastball, so he can throw 5 miles an hour faster, or a golfer that wants to improve his game. We look at that not as a problem, but as optimizing. And, somebody who comes in, and they're terrified of heights, all they want to do is get over the heights. And I'll do that, but I'll only do that if I can do more, because I don't want the machine to build more crap. And if they have a machine that builds crap, you got to fix the machine somehow and get it to build better decisions. Because if you have a bad feeling and it gets you to move away from something, then, if you're an agoraphobic, you end up in your bedroom starving to death. And, all of these things keep getting worse or they start getting better. And it's not until people look at things that are bad as challenges and they start looking, where's the upside? It requires that ultimately in our clients, we build boundless optimism. So what's the first question?
Hi, Richard. How are you?
There you are. Now I got you.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure, always an honor, Richard, to be with you. Richard, my question is basically on three aspects of the list that was given to us. Addiction and bad habits are very much closely linked, and that sometimes
addiction is the ultimate bad habit.
Yes, true.
So,
that's
yes,
right.
They're
true.
linked,
Yeah.
but you can have a bad habit, of picking your nose, but as opposed to shooting heroin, on a scale of 1 to 10, one is a 1 and the other is a 10.
That's true. Now, but the ultimate bad habit I want to actually, in fact, addiction I want to talk about is visual addiction. That really is hurting the society nowadays. So we do a lot of work with those.
What kind of addiction?
Visual addiction, which includes pornography,
like pornography?
screen gaming, all these sorts of things that lead to, brainless activity given on the screen. So that is my one question: how we can help better our clients with that. And the second one is about OCD. How can we work with the OCD clients using
Well, those are
NLP?
two entirely different questions.
I was told to ask two questions.
Yeah, but you were told to ask me one question. So let's start with the first one.
Let's start with the addiction then. Let's keep it to the addiction.
Okay. The thing about addiction, no matter what kind it is, but especially a visual addiction, is about the time that it wastes. And until people can wrap their head around how much time they're wasting, you can't really make any headway, because this is where, this is the ultimate case of making the same bad decision over and over again. If it's a physical addiction, they have an excuse, right? Nowadays with all of the addiction treatment telling you that it's a disease rather than stupidity, that, I'm sorry, there's a real difference between having COVID, because it's not like you go out and suck COVID people's mouths every day, so that you can keep your COVID rush going. That's a disease. Diseases are treated with things like antibiotics, and addictions, you have to get people to recognize the supreme stupidity of what they're doing, and they have to measure it in time. If you think of how much trouble it is, to go through all the money they go through, they have to get the money. Some of these people, like, when they tried to legalize in Zurich, drug sales and drug addiction in a park in the center of town, then what happened is for blocks and blocks and blocks around the park, the crime wave went through the ceiling, because the junkies didn't have enough money, so they'd go out and they'd rob somebody or a house or steal a TV or break in and steal jewelry and pawn it all and then go down and buy their drugs. And if you think of the amount of effort it takes to steal enough to support $100 or $200 a day habit, crack at least was cheaper, but it's just as dumb, because you have to go through all the trouble to get it. You have to go to the trouble to take it. You have to have a place to sit around and be high. And, the cost benefit of your life is just so stupid that when you have to get people to recognize the stupidity of what they're doing. And I don't mean recognize where they look at you and go, yeah, I know this is a bad thing that I'm doing. It's where they start laughing at it and going, you have to get it raised up through the threshold till the point where their brain goes, I've had enough. Now, most drug addiction things tell you that you have to hit rock bottom to get to that point. And that's not really true. If you understand what it takes to spin a feeling, once you start thinking that something is stupid, you can spin that feeling till the point where it breaks threshold and people start going, enough is enough. I'm going to do whatever it takes to stop this. Then what you have to do is you have to reverse engineer, because what happens is people get an endorphin rush from whatever it is, cigarettes, pornography, whatever it is. They look at the pornography and they get an endorphin rush. But you have to get them to make a big, giant picture where they look at the object they're addicted to and go, I'm not interested. And ask them, would you like to be this person? Because you are going to get back thousands and tens of thousands of hours. Somebody staring at porn for 3 hours a day, just to add it up. I mean, literally add up, if you're surfing porn for 3 hours a day, that's 1,000 hours a year. And, in 10 years, that's 10,000 hours. In 40 years, it's 40,000 hours. It's just an enormous amount of time. And somebody who does it 8-10 hours a day, it's even more ridiculous. I had somebody that woke up and watched porn all day long, right? They were doing 10, 12, 15 hours only because they were rich enough to afford not going to work. And of course, they were burning up their time, burning up their money. And, when you start looking at, and you go, look, is it smart? This is always the thing you have to go, is it smart in the next 10 years to spend thousands of hours thousands of dollars, right, doing nothing, right? And when people go, I know it's stupid, and you go, no, you don't. And then you take that feeling and you spin it all the way up to the point, and then you build them a shiny new picture where they can see themselves behaving entirely differently. And you go, do you want to be that guy? And you spin it. They say, yes, you spin the feeling up so that the desire becomes stronger than the desire for drugs. Then you set up an endorphin rush so that every time they say no, they discover they're doing the right thing. Every time they're sitting there and their brain goes, I should turn on my computer and look at porn. I should light a cigarette, whatever it is. As soon as the brain says that, and you say to yourself, no, and look at the picture of who you want to be, you need to get an endorphin rush, because that just interrupts the process. If you can get an endorphin rush from making the right choice, everybody who quits smoking, I tell them, I go, look, stay away from the nicotine patches, stay away from all that shit, right? You want to feel the withdrawal, because every time you feel it, it's telling you you're doing exactly the right thing. Every time your brain goes, I need to turn on the computer and look at naked people fucking, right? Your brain should go, no, I want to be this guy. And it should get a better endorphin rush than it gets from looking at porn. Plus, it happens a lot quicker, so you get back thousands and thousands of hours of your own life. That's the formula that I use, and I've used it for years. I've gotten people off of heroin, cigarettes, porn, everything you can fucking imagine under the sun. You know, the hardest one of all are the people that are addicted to admiration. We have a few of those in our field.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much for this one. Can I ask for the second one now?
Well, let the others ask their questions, and if we
Okay.
have time, we'll get back to OCD. It's kind of a long one.
It's Hema, Richard. Can you hear me?
I can just barely, actually. The lighting isn't very good where you are, but I can hear you pretty good.
Okay, great. Lovely to see you again, Richard, after a long time. I've got a quick question. I've got lots of questions, but I'm sticking with your book.
Just
So
ask one question, okay?
Yes.
You get one question, so pick one you want to ask. Speak slowly, one word at a time. I'm an old person.
Okay. Belief systems.
Belief system.
People have lots of beliefs. Sometimes it's very unsupportive. How do we change them quickly?
Well, you know, believing is an activity. It's not a thing. So when you say belief system, that's a psychological concept, and it's a big ass normalization. So you have to ask how they believe things so that you get an answer to the process. And even better is, how do they know they believe something? So that even with the sun coming up in the morning, if you ask somebody the question, even if they don't answer out loud, they have to make pictures, say something to themselves, and have certain feelings in order to answer yes. And so when people believe stupid things, which is probably what you're talking about, because a lot of my clients come in believing, you know, that nobody will love them. You know, I've had people that, you know, believed that if they didn't replace their tits with large ones, they would never find a person to love them. You know, and, you know, I'm talking about 13-year-old girls, you know, and I mean, to me, that's just idiotic, because, you know, if somebody loves you because you have plastic tits, that's really not the foundation for a long-term relationship, because odds are, after time, somebody on the planet's going to have better tits than you. That's just a fact. And, you know, there are a lot of stupid men, you know, that leave good relationships and go with a younger woman. And when I find this out, I know as a fact, they will be punished for this, because they've picked somebody because of their age, not because of their wisdom, not because of who they are, not because of an intimate connection, not because of years of having done things together. They want to start over based on a feeling that, you know, that they get a rush from. And that's just like taking drugs and going, this is going to be my life. I'm going to be a heroin addict. It never works out in the end. Heroin addicts are never satisfied with their life. And they won't be, they just go from one fix to another, so they're just going to go from one young girl to another. And if they picked a girl that's picking a guy that's 3 times her age, just because he's got money or he's got this, or probably their attention span is about that of a flea. So it's not going to work out in the long run. And when people believe stupid things, right, you have to get them to consider how stupid it is, which means they need longer movies, right? They haven't run the movie long enough to find out what happens. The person who's hooked on cocaine, right, when you offer them cocaine, they make that decision based on how it's going to make them feel in 2 minutes, right? That's how long the movie is. Snort the cocaine, I'm going to get high. They don't run it over and over and over and watch their world dissolve around them. I've had musicians that were worth over $500 million, literally liquid assets in the bank. Money is just pouring in from records and concerts, right? And they're so addicted to cocaine, they can't get on the fucking stage, right? And their managers send them to me, and they always come in. And, and at the time I used to have a dog that was a drug sniffing dog. I don't have it anymore, but I used to. And my dog would immediately tell me they had drugs on them. My dog was a kind of, what do you call that person who squeals on everybody? A rat. My dog would go, he's got drugs, and I would literally get them to take out the drugs, put some out in front of them and go, do you want this? And they go, yeah. And I go, oh, how do you know you want it? And they go, well, I know how it will make me feel. And then I find out that the movie that's running in their head only runs 2 or 3 minutes ahead. So I extend the movie over the years to the point where their body deteriorates, where they end up having welts and sores all over them, where they end up burning out the inside of their fucking sinuses, where they get kicked out of the band for not being there. Their wife divorces them, takes the kids and the money in the house, and they end up on the gutter laying in the street, and somebody comes out and pisses on them while they're jonesing and going through withdrawal. And I go, do you want it now? Because if they don't make a long enough movie, they don't have the ability to go to the step that I told the last guy of making a bigger picture where they see themselves doing the right thing for the right reason. The way you have good beliefs and good things is doing the right thing, and not only doing the right thing, doing it for the right reason. Because if somebody drops their groceries and you help them pick it up so that everybody will know how cool you are, you don't get to have self-esteem. Self-esteem comes from picking it up because it's the right thing to do and not caring that other people watch you do it. But see, the difference between those two, if you believe you do the right thing and it will make you feel good, it becomes a moral guide for your behavior. Whoever wrote the Bibles originally, especially the Torah, had a pretty good fixation on this, that, there was a list of the things that were the right thing to do. And a lot of people, tell me, they go, well, I look at, the thing and it says, honor your parents. And they go, my parents were terrible. And I said, it doesn't say in the Bible, like your parents. It said, appreciate the fact that they put you on the planet. Honor them for that. If that's all they did, that's what you honor them for. But if you focus on how terrible they were, it will chew up the rest of your life. And so as a guide for your behavior, obviously killing people is not a good idea. Although for some reason, there are people on this planet that just can't stop doing it. The whole Middle East is going unglued because, a group of people thinks it's a good idea to wipe another group of people off the face of the earth. If they would spend their time making their own lives better, they wouldn't have that tendency. But they weren't educated well as children to have respect for other people. You're not supposed to steal from you're not supposed to commit adultery, all of these things, good advice, and we need to have a moral compass in order to feel good. And people who have these beliefs are not basing their beliefs on a moral compass. So you have to give them one. You don't have to talk about morals, but you have to get them to be able to decide the difference between what's stupid and what's not. And you can measure that by how much time it takes, because making good decisions shouldn't take a lot of time. You should be able to run a long enough movie to know how it's going to come out and do the right thing. And if you don't run a long enough movie, you're not going to make the right decisions, and you will build really idiotic beliefs. All kinds of stupid things people come in with me. And some of them aren't even coming for repair. A lot of them with stupid beliefs come in and, they're the highest paid athletes in the land. These people make so much money, I can't even understand how much money they're making. Some of these people are paid hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and they come in and start telling me all the superstitions they follow before a game. My hat has to be pointing to the left, when I take it off my head and put it in the locker. Otherwise, I know I'll blow the game. And I'm thinking to myself, here's this, 23-year-old making more money in 1 year than I'll make in my whole life, right? And he thinks it's based on the angle of his hat. And they have things like they believe that at least once or twice a year, you're going to go into a slump, and that's to be expected. When I was at the doctor's yesterday, the doctor did something, and he literally looked me straight in the eye, and he goes, "Does this hurt?" And I went, "Do you want it to?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Then stop telling me that." And he goes, "Well, later tonight when the anesthesia wears off, this is really going to hurt." And I went, "Thanks a lot." Like it wouldn't hurt if he didn't mention it to me. He had the belief that he had to warn you about all these things because it's going to happen to everybody. And I tried to explain to him. I said, "I'm a hypnotist." I said, "If I'm going to have pain, I typically try to have it in other people."
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard.
You bet.
Hi, Richard. How are you doing?
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. Really well, thank you. So I work with a lot of business coaches and consultants, and they get really anxious about how they're going to succeed in setting up their own business coaching and consulting practice. And they play the yeah, but game and the what if game. What advice have you got for them?
Well, it may sound a bit repetitive, but again, what could be more of a waste of fucking time? See, because if you're going through, but what if, but what if, but what if, but what if I don't get enough clients? What if they don't pay me? And then I wouldn't be able to pay my mortgage. I'd lose my house. My wife would divorce me. And they go down this endless chain of possibilities. And I always look at them and I go, good planning. Because if they don't start laughing at this shit, they're going to do it for the rest of their life. And, a lot of people say, why do you use so much humor? And it's because of the endorphins, because the way you interrupt a neurocortical pathway is not like Tony Robbins says. It's not by going, woo, 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 woo. That doesn't interrupt a neurocortical pathway. Endorphins and oxytocin do. These are both neurotransmitters. And, and that when you have endorphin, you get oxytocin. Oxytocin, when administered to autistic children, it's synthetic. What happens is they begin to recognize the difference between an angry face and a happy face. So they stop pushing people away. It allows you to build patterns in your mind. Remember, if a neurocortical pathway is running through the same loops over and over and over again, that means they're learned. So the ultimate spider test is, can you think these bad thoughts and make yourself feel bad? And when they go, yes, I can, very easily. And then you go, good job. Now that you've mastered that stupid ass stuff, let's see if you can master something more important, because you want to catch them right at the beginning and get them to go down a different neurocortical pathway, so that when they start to do it, they go, oh, this is stupid, I'm not doing it. And then they need to go into something where they plan how they're going to succeed. Because if there's a hint in your mind that you might not, then you need to make better plans and backup plans so that you do. Because if they think they're going to run out of stupid people on planet Earth, they are sadly mistaken. The reason the coaching profession has become so humongously enormous is because of two things. One is the failure of all psychotherapy, because it doesn't help. and the fact that everybody needs somebody to tell them how to be smarter. And, you know, we live in a community of human beings. We have something that a lot of species on the planet don't have. We have the ability to communicate and teach through language, right? And not just, you know, I mean, apes can imitate each other. They can warn each other. They have a few signals, but they don't have the ability to describe how to do something that they've never seen before. That, you know, there are videos now online where you can learn to play the guitar without a guitar teacher. That doesn't mean you don't need one, right? Because the one thing that's missing in all those videos is the intimate connection between a teacher and a student. And everybody needs teachers. I had some of the best on the planet. I had people like Robert Anton Wilson. I had people like Milton Erickson. I didn't like him, but he was a good teacher for me. Virginia Satir, I liked a lot. She was a great teacher for me. And the people that taught me things, and it's all kinds of them. Some of them were my clients. You know, they just came in and said something that was smarter than they could hear. And I listened to them. The first time a client said to me, I have a problem and I've blown it out of proportion. And I literally looked at them and said, how big is it? And they went, bigger than this room. And I thought, that's where all the submodality stuff started. Just that one comment, that when you listen, when I had an opera singer that said to me, you know, he said, well, he goes, when I'm performing, I have nothing but motivation, but when I practice, it's just not there. And when I watched the hand gesture, I went, ooh, you know, they're talking about the direction of their feelings. You know, that was way back in the 1980s. I'll never forget the guy. I never saw him again, but I solved his problem. He needed to be motivated to practice. And, you know, for some reason, when he performed, he was all there, but when he practiced, it wasn't. And he was just running his feelings in the wrong direction. As soon as he reversed the way in which his feelings went, he could practice all he wanted to. Because one thing is a reaction. When people have bad beliefs, they react to them. They don't stop and go, this feeling is the wrong feeling. Because the spider test is you take your feeling, you spin it even worse, and so that you can make it worse. Because if you can make it worse, you can make it better. And when people have a stupid belief, I shrink it down and put another one up in its place and teach them to spin their feelings in the right direction. So they stop, they stop what they're doing, laugh, right? Get the endorphin rush, and then look at where they want to go and make a better plan.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you for being my teacher, Richard.
Yes, it's been a pleasure.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. After
Okay.
COVID, especially, it's getting better and better. So I have a question. I work with a lot of people, working businessmen and businesswomen, and there is a problem that I wanted to ask also about the new book that is coming. The main problem that I have found in the last 2 years, especially, is that they are suffering a lot with burnout, and they are not being aware of this burnout in their system. So, because it's a lot of things going on in their professional and personal life. So I'd like to know because I see it like a more complex problem, where we can focus mostly in your book that we find, you know, like proper information and the techniques that can help.
In the book, and even in the seminar I'm doing next week, I've got a whole section on it because I'm a firm believer in this. I've said this for years. Everything needs an on button and an off button. And I worked for a while with one of the embassies because they were bringing their people into the country and having them run businesses. And in particular, it was the Japanese. And they had a problem. What happened was these executives were so driven to work that they would burn out after a few years. There is nothing more expensive to replace than a CEO, nothing, because they have years of experience that you can't train people in. They can come in with all the MBA concepts in the world, but that doesn't tell you how to run a company that you ran from the ground up. And the person who runs the company from the ground up was good at it because they have a lot of energy. But if when they walk in the door of their house, it doesn't shut off and they don't spend time with their family and they don't spend time with their kids, enjoy their wife and the big house that they bought, there's no point to it. They have to walk out of the house and turn the machine back on so that they can go to work and do what they need to do. They need to stop periodically through the day and complete all their motor programs. When I worked with them, I'd go into their office, I'd have them open every drawer and close it, click the stapler, pick up the telephone and put it down. That was back when they were on desks, not in your pocket. But so that they completed all the motor programs so that their body would go back to ground zero. Most of these people their ground zero is out of a scale of 1 to 100, probably about 600. So that when they go into the rest mode, they're actually still spinning neurologically and kinesthetically at a high rate. I use a lot of deep trance with them. I teach them to go to zero and maybe a little bit less than zero and get a few minutes of rest. I usually teach them time distortion so they can do it quickly, so that then in the time it takes to blink their eyes, they get 30 minutes of rest. So instead of meditating for hours, they don't have to. They just go in, their body zeroes itself. I teach them how to balance their head back and forth, how to sit in a position of zero gravity, because most of them are so into things, they either lean too far back or too far forward. And the shearing force of gravity alone accelerates their nervous system. And teaching them to be balanced in their actions. They need to be not only the smartest guy in their game, they need to be like a Tai Chi master, and they need to have that feeling. When I was in San Francisco, I used to send them up to get enzyme baths, which is a thing the Japanese have, and it sucks all the negative chemicals out of your body, and you walk out feeling like a Tai Chi master for a few hours. And I did that just so they'd have a reference point. Later in life, when I finally moved out of the country, I did it differently. I put them in deep trances and I had them feel gravity like it was liquid going over them to the point where they could find that 0 point. And then I installed literal buttons like their front door. So that, whatever the signals were, walking into work, walking out of work, going to lunch, it's either a business lunch or it's a relaxing lunch. Make a decision about it and turn it on or turn it off. And learning to turn on your high motivated state and then turning it off so your nervous system can relax prevents burnout.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really like a very widespread problem. Also, some of my students have encountered it with people that are working, because they're really very focused, like you said, in results, and it doesn't bring them really very far.
Right. But if every spare moment you sit back and you run scenarios in your head endlessly, rather than realize that the one thing that is your greatest asset, if you ask people, you go, what's the greatest asset you have as a CEO of this company? People will go, my secretary. They'll go, they'll name all these things. And I'll go, no, it's your nervous system. And, you take your car in to be serviced, you turn your car off at night, you don't let it run all night out on the street. Why would you do that to your brain? That's just stupid. You got to get your brain to go to zero, calm itself down, calm your nervous self down so that you feel whole. And, some of them, I had some of them became such bad alcoholics because it was the only way they could relax. So they started having martinis at lunch. I had a couple of them that started smoking pot, but then they started making worse decisions because that interferes with your ability to make good decisions when you come back inside. It may help you to relax on your 10-minute break, but the next 3 hours you do stupid shit. It just doesn't make you smarter. Anybody that says that drugs make you smarter wasn't around in the 60s. I was, and it don't make you smarter. They even had things they called smart drugs, but they weren't. Those were microproteins that you took. They didn't have barbiturates in them and things. And when people start having to take sleeping pills to go to sleep and speed to wake up and then if they're hyperactive, they take speed because it helps them to focus, but it doesn't really. They put my grandson on some kind of stupid drug, to help him focus attention at school. And he just ended up going off the rails. And we finally got him off of the drugs. And now he gets good grades and pays attention, because all he needed to do is start paying attention. And the problem with paying attention is that schools are full of boring people.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. Like always, it's very valuable.
Thank you. And Dr. Bandler, we have one last question.
You guys are stretching this out, aren't you? Okay.
Last one from Australia.
From Australia.
Italian trainer.
The guy that raises kangaroos?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Boy, when I was there, you didn't have to raise them. They were everywhere. They were on the golf courses. They were all over the bloody place.
Yeah. They're in the city. They just walk by. Absolutely.
Right. Is there now a shortage of kangaroos?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, they're still here. Well, Dr. Bandler, thank you very much for the opportunity. Juan, thank you very much. I have a few questions, but there is one that a few people kept asking me that would be great if I could have an answer from you. And it's about chiding humor.
Chiding?
Chiding
Is a particular kind of humor. There's slapstick humor. There's all kinds of different humor. When one chides somebody, this is when you say things which are blatantly false to exaggerate them. When somebody tells you, that every day they get up in the morning, and they take a whole bunch of pills, and the pills fuck them all up. And you look at them and you go, good plan. Are you going to do it tomorrow? And you go, good plan. It's different than sarcasm, because sarcasm is cutting. Chiding is where you make something as humorous as it actually is. And the importance of chiding is almost saying, come away closer. It's paradoxical. When you say come away closer, it's ridiculous, because you're either coming closer or, but come away means you're moving. And that when you set up that paradox between your tone of voice and the words that you're saying, you're being maximally incongruent, but you're doing it with a smile on your face. When you're describing a bad idea and you go, oh, that's great, that's lovely. Gee, let's add that up. So you're going to spend an hour a day worrying about this. That's only 365 hours in a year. Let's see, 3,650, in 10 years. And let's see, in 40 years, oh my God, that's almost 15,000 hours. So your plan is to spend 15,000 hours thinking this thought that gives you pain. Good idea. Now, that's what chiding is, because it's obviously not a good idea, and they haven't considered the amount of time that it's going to take, and just think what you could do with 15,000 hours. I mean, there are a lot of people that got rich in less time than that. You could be spending that time having sex. You could spend that time doing things to make you healthy. You can do things that make you rich, but you're too busy for that, because you got to think these worrying thoughts. Right? Good plan, really good plan. And when they get a look on their face when you chide them, like, yeah, I know that, and you go, no, you don't, because you're going to do it tomorrow, right? Because you don't have a choice. That's when you have them see themselves not doing it and see themselves being someone they're not. The reason you put them in the picture is because they're not there. You have to get them to want it. This picture has to be bigger than the stupid ones they're making now. So you shrink down the stupid ones they're making now, put a border around them. That automatically gets it to switch hemispheres, by the way. When you put a border around something that you've thought about 100 times, it goes from being remembered to being constructed, which takes all the juice out of it. It's now in a different part of the brain. Say, a lot of these are neurological tricks, because in the end, we want a different neurological machine. When they look at this and then look at the new picture and they go, I want to be him, you want to spin that desire up so that they look at it, that they want this more than they're willing to feel bad about that. And when they start to think about it, that's when the chiding comes in. They start to feel stupid. The endorphins give them another gate that allows the neurology to go in a different direction. Because the trouble is, it goes into a loop, and it wears itself out, it habituates and stops, and then it starts again and does the same thing. If it right in this loop there, you can make it so they have another choice. You create an OR gate instead of an AND gate. See, the reason people think about it for a while and then stop is the neurology just habituates. Any nerve that you keep touching will eventually have no feeling because it just habituates. That's why your eyes jiggle all the time, right? Because if they actually held still, you wouldn't be able to see. The nerves would just wear themselves out and it would go blank. They attached a little frames with a picture of a house on somebody's eyes. A woman named Dorothy Kimura did this. And this is part of how I figured out accessing cues. I read her journal article, and in the journal article, she said, you know, we put little pictures of a white house attached it to the eyes, and as the eyes moved, it just went white. Everything disappeared because the nerves habituated, because the image moved with the jiggling of the eyes. And she said, when I asked people, you know, what was on the image, they all stopped and looked up and to the left, except about 20%, which just happens to be the number of people that are left-handed roughly on the planet.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Well,
Chiding is an incredibly powerful tool, and probably one of the most powerful tools in my arsenal is that I'm very good at it. And I'd recommend you all become very good at it. It makes your job more fun, and it makes everything go faster.
bye-bye.
Adios.